with previous roles at Immutable X and Habbo Hotel. Our first panelist, Sahil Dewan from Karma3 Labs. He co-founded Harmony Protocol in 2018 and is a graduate of Harvard University, where he served as the president of a blockchain and cryptocurrency club. He has since started Karma3 Labs, which is open protocol that allows the developers to create on-chain ranking and recommendation system for their apps. Welcome, Sahil, to InfraCon. And then next one we have Debbie, the head of Dev Relations and Lit Protocol. Debbie has a deep knowledge in software engineering and technical education through her experience at Amazon, Strava, and more startups in the Bay Area. She is able to bridge the gap between complex technical concepts and leverage her expertise to drive engagement, grow development, ecosystem, and advocates for user-centric development at Lit Protocol. And next one we have Nader Dabit, the Director of Dev Relations at Aave and Lens Protocol. Nader is currently leading developer relations at exciting projects at Aave and Lens Protocol. He specializes in full-stack cloud, AI, and blockchain application development with React and React Native. He previously led developer application development advocacy for front-end web and mobile at Amazon Web Services and the Graph Protocol. Welcome, Nader, right? Nader? Okay, to InfraCon. Next one, we have Joe, the co-founder of 3Box Labs and co-creator of Ceramic. He's been in Web3 since 2014. And very last one, he's not here yet, Oleg. He's the co-founder of Sweat Economy. He's going to be joining us maybe during the session, but he's on his way here. Sweat Economy, just before he gets here, let me do a little introduction on that. It's a digital currency backed by physical movement. It makes people more active, fitter, and healthier, and have a low carbon footprint. So we will be welcome him during the session when he comes here. But anyways, without further ado, I will leave the stage to Holly, the moderator for it.
Thank you, Luki. I'm Holly. Maybe I should hold this here. I'm from Orbis. We're a Web3 social protocol. You can use our SDK to add private messaging, discussion feeds to whatever your app is. Thank you for having me here today. Yeah, so I guess we'll just start with the intros. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you, and thanks for the intro. I think finally I can say without a mask. I forgot to remove my mask from my Twitter profile. But I'm Sahil. I'm currently working on Karma3 Labs, and we're thinking hard about solving the identity and reputation layer for Web3. And I think the whole idea is in the last 4 or 5 years we've just seen an abundance of on-chain information. People actually want to go beyond just buying and selling tokens, coordinate on-chain. What does it mean when we're on-chain in coordinating with each other? Are we talking to a Sybil? Are we talking to a bot? Are we transacting with people who we can trust? So solving that trust layer through an identity and reputation middleware is what we're building. And we have some exciting kind of stuff happening on Lens and some other use cases. So if you're excited to chat more about this, hit us up. Thanks.
I think she did a pretty good job introducing me. I've been in developer education for about 8 years, and I've been a developer for about 11 years, and I'm currently working with Aave and Lens Protocol.
Hi, I'm Debbie, and I lead developer relations at Lit. I just want to do a little bit of intro on Lit, where it's a access control and programmatic sliding, like middleware layer. So really thinking about how to help folks build that infrastructure layer on privacy. And at the end of the day, really pushing forward user experience in Web3. And I've been around the Web3 ecosystem for a couple of years now, and my main background is in Web2.
Hey everyone, I'm Joel. I'm co-founder of Karma3 Labs. We've been building surrounding for a few years. Essentially, that's a decentralized data ledgers to notarize any type of verifiable action.
Hello, hello. I'm Oleg. I'm co-founder of Sweatcoin and Sweat Economy. And I guess I'm here because we have a lot of people. I'm just looking at our app and I'm realizing that 332,000 people have voted on our latest governance vote. So by definition, we actually do shed loads of work with our community and around engaging them and bringing them closer to our app.
Okay. Sorry, I'm struggling with this microphone. I don't know where to hold it. Is this okay over here? Like too loud? Okay. Yeah. So I guess my first question for the panelists is, how do you see, in your personal, from your perspective, how do you see SocialFi differing from traditional Web 2 social media?
I think it might be cool to have like a definition of SocialFi from somebody that wants to give that.
Yeah, does anybody want to give a definition for that? Because I think it has like a different meaning for different people. For example, like the project that I'm working on, Orbis, there's no Fi in it, but we don't have a token. We're built on a decentralized network, but I'd consider it more like Web3 social, but I think the more commonly used term is SocialFi. So if anybody resonates with that more and wants to explain that, anybody?
I think it's a bit of a red herring, the SocialFi. I think what matters in Web3 is community engagement, and that's what I absolutely love in comparison to Web2, because in Web2 you develop a product and then you have users. In Web3 you end up having people that co-create with you and they have a massive voice, because if they don't like what you do, in Web2, all you get is low retention, low numbers. In Web3, you just get slaughtered through every single channel that you have. So what I absolutely adore is the fact that we have a constant conversation with our audience. And I think that this is very, very different from any other experiences that I had building businesses.
Yeah, sounds good. So yeah, I guess maybe I could, like, if you guys want to have an answer to the question about how you see it, if the rest of you have any answer to the question about how you see SocialFi or Web3 social or decentralized social differing from like previous social media applications. Yeah.
Well, it seems like that's sort of what we need to figure out, right? Like we haven't really figured that out yet. We know that blockchains provide this like fantastic infrastructure for finance. And we think that there is some sort of value that like decentralized social media can bring beyond just like being a replica of Web2 platforms. But exactly like in what shape and form that really is something that like can be something that grows massively and like provides unique value over Web2 social media. I don't think we really know that yet.
I think it was like really interesting to see the two biggest founders of social in the entire like history of the world, Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey, have both started building decentralized social platforms. So if you look at what Threads is, and you saw the CTO, who's also the CTO of Instagram, post about a week ago, they're integrating ActivityPub, and he posted on Threads, which his post had thousands of likes. He was talking about decentralized, moving Threads into decentralized social. He was talking about censorship resistance, and he was talking about deplatforming and owning your data. And then you see Jack Dorsey, who founded Twitter, who then founded Blue Sky, and then founded Nostr, also moving towards decentralization. I think it was interesting to see like a year ago that most of that industry was like laughing at decentralization and Web3, and now you see the two biggest founders in the history of the world in social now building towards Web3 social, like in some form or fashion. I think that's a huge validation of like what we've been building, and anyone else that's been building in this way. And I think the value proposition, in my opinion, like has to do with like users and developers. I think there's a lot of more experimentation that can happen for developers because it's so much easier to build a front end when you're not having to kind of build the infrastructure, maintain the back end, and rebuild the user base. But for users, you have the portability of your social graph across many experiences. So if Twitter, like one day changes their recommendation algorithm and you don't like the information you're seeing, you can take your following, you can take your content and everything and move to a different platform that's better. Or someone creates like a new way to express yourself with AI or with video or with images or with sound or anything. You don't have to rebuild your following from scratch. You can kind of like port your social graph. And then one other thing that a lot of people like mentioned is monetization built into the platform. It's cool to see Twitter starting to add some of that, but having blockchains and peer-to-peer currency is adding additional value. And then finally, I would probably have to say censorship resistance and just waking up tomorrow morning knowing that your profile isn't deleted because some arbitrary reason or someone blocked you and doesn't like you working at the company. There's all types of reasons why people's entire profiles have been deleted and removed in the past. So that's my general like overview, I would say.
So I absolutely, I think, agree with what Nader just said. I think one way we think a lot about this Karma3 is the power center in social is moving from centralized companies, which actually bundled and owned the entire stack. The identity layer, our usernames, our Twitter, our Google logins don't belong to us, they belong to them. The data layer, everything about us. The recommendation layer, the monetization layer, the ads layer, the front end layer. Everything used to belong to these centralized social companies, and now there's this unbundling happening. Not one single party owns the entire social graph. Not one single party owns the front end, and hopefully we'll see a lot more innovation. But I think the cool part, which all of us are trying to figure out here, is we're building these different parts of this new social media stack, which will enable developer innovation. And the user and the developers are at the center, having all the power versus all these centralized companies. And I think that's something cool. It will take time for us to probably start competing meaningfully with the systems that we've been used to over the last 2 decades. But it's happening, and I think that's kind of the cool part. I remember one of my personal stories is 11 years ago, I was building a mobile startup, a social network mobile startup back home in India. And I was depending on the LinkedIn APIs. And I got cut off. I got cancelled by LinkedIn because they shut that particular alumni API that I was using. The same thing happened with Reddit a month or 2 ago, right? Now, these things should not happen, and that's what we need to protect, are not possible in some way if we do decentralized social right. So I think that's kind of the fundamental backbone that is different for how decentralized social takes off. It's the exciting part.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think one of the biggest things for me is right now in Web 2 social, like traditional social media, everything is super siloed. Like you have like every app, like for every type of social interaction, there's a different app, there's a different way of communicating with people, and it just gets like there's just so many different like places that your data is stored or that your conversations are stored like on a personal level, and then there's like not that many different actual platforms then, like it's, so I think in the way that I see like Web3 or decentralized social is that there's like more like maybe one back end where everybody's like data can be stored in like their own decentralized identity, but that you have like tons of different social experiences that different developers have built that are all just like kind of part of this big web of social experiences. Yeah, so I guess moving on from that, what do you guys think are the biggest challenges that you've faced or in general to onboarding more traditional users to Web3 social, or if you haven't started that yet, what do you like anticipate the challenges being?
I can start with that because we're onboarding about 10,000 people people every day, and 95% of them are Web 2, who are crypto curious, and they're joining to start their journey. I think the biggest challenge actually is giving them really good proposition and good UX. A lot of people are talking about, kind of breaking it over to next billion users, but then they use hodl, biddle, staking, yield farming, and these people run away because they just don't understand what the hell is going on. And then when you open your mobile app, and I'll accentuate that, because if you're building for web, you're not building for the next billion people, you're not building a social product, because last Christmas I was in Africa. We were in a Maasai village. These guys all have Android phones. They certainly never ever going to get a desktop, and they don't have laptops because it's just too power hungry, and all their power comes from solar. So the most important thing is UX and good proposition. Everything else I think is absolutely trivial and easy in comparison to kind of Web 2.
I also think that goes to what you were saying before, like community. So people, it really matters what community people want to be a part of. And I see a big opportunity with people looking for alternatives from Twitter, where they're willing to try a lot more apps, be it Web 2 or Web 3. So there's Lens, there's Forecaster, there's so many different option threads. And I think part of that UX and part of that value prop, there's an added part of, does someone want to be a part of that community? What is sticky about that? And I think Web 3 works very differently than Web 2, where there are a lot of shifting paradigms where we don't have to build in a way where it's addictive either. It's like, actually, you can build true community.
I absolutely love what you just said, because in Web 3 you genuinely have products that people want to use. And the reason why we know that is because many products that have the highest usage, shit, like total and... I mean, think of Uniswap, think of PancakeSwap. You know what? It's amazing that they have so much usage with such a shitty product. But it is. It's a shit product. Maasai in Africa will never be able to figure out PancakeSwap. Never ever. And I am with them. Why would they? It hasn't been built for the next billion people, and that's the thing that we need to start doing. Building for people not with $1 billion, but with people that have $3, $5 to their soul. I think that's where Web3 is going to go, really and truly mass market.
Yeah, I hope nobody hears from PancakeSwap. Yeah, I mean, I love your apps. They're great. I know you worked hard on them. So yeah, I guess to move on, do you guys think it's possible to really create a great user experience with the technology that we have now in Web3? Like, what do you see as challenges to that, and like how can you maintain, do you like prioritize or maintain the security and privacy elements, I guess, of Web3, the transparency, while also adding like a really great user experience?
I mean, it feels like there's two main issues, wallet UX and then scalability, while kind of like maintaining the censorship resistance, permanence, and immutability on the data layer. And there is no blockchain like that exists today, actually. That is a traditional like financial quote-unquote blockchain that kind of like I would say like if you're making a state update, it needs to be propagated to the entire network for the next state update to be made. And I guess what I'm kind of talking about is like the double spending problem that you see implemented in like all the basic traditional like blockchains. But when you start thinking about what you need for Web3 social, you don't actually need that. What you need is permanence, immutability, and censorship resistance. You don't have to prevent the double spend. So if you kind of build an infrastructure that kind of plays to that, you remove a massive constraint, and therefore you can kind of, instead of using a blockchain, use something like a data availability layer. And I think like that's kind of where people are moving, and that's what we've done. We re-architected Lens a few months ago and deployed to Bundler network with Arweave. Currently we'll scale to around 55,000 transactions per second, which is kind of around what Twitter handled at the peak of the World Cup. And Bundler network is continuing to improve their scalability, and I think from what I understand from Josh, the founder of Bundler, they're going to be reaching closer to around like the millions of transactions per second, because their infrastructure is not dependent on preventing the double spend problem. All they are is a data storage layer. So like what I think the infrastructure like side of this is starting to be solved. You also have Celestia, and you have EigenLayer, you have all these other interesting ways that you can do data availability committees and stuff like that. So like I think then you're kind of looking at the wallet and the UX in terms of like onboarding the users, and a lot of people are building out ways for people to sign up with email and have more of like an OAuth experience. And then with these new data availability layers, the transaction costs are like really cheap. So you're now able to treat the infrastructure layer like AWS, Google Cloud, and all these other infrastructures are kind of treated in a traditional like Twitter application. So the user doesn't have to sign a transaction, they don't have to pay anything, it's all subsidized by the client. And I think with our new infrastructure, the transaction cost is like 0.0002 cents per transaction, which like we looked at it and it's around, it was some crazy number, thousands of % cheaper than like our previous infrastructure, which was on completely on a layer or a side chain, which is Polygon. We still use Polygon, but only for like financial transactions. So I guess to kind of like really summarize what I'm trying to say is like we need to improve and fix the wallet UX issue and make it to where my mom or my brother can go to a website, click sign in or sign up like they would OAuth with Google and have an account and then start using it. And they don't have to worry about buying a token, like getting their KYC done with Coinbase, buying the right token, downloading a wallet, understanding mnemonic seed phrases and networks and HTTP endpoints that they need to set up for the RPC and all this like stuff that 99.999% of the world isn't going to deal with because it's like complete bullshit, to be quite honest, when it comes to actually using like just a normal app. So I think wallet UX is the big challenge right now, and no one's actually solved that. A lot of people are almost there though.
I think just to add one more dimension, we absolutely need scalability and wallet UX and security for onboarding these new users into social. All of that piece is kind of the foundational infra we need to build, and I think we're getting very close to that. We've seen so many decentralized social examples, apps which are ready, powered by all these decentralized infra pieces. The other dimension which is interesting, if you look at any traditional social media app today, which has a significant number of users, whether it's Reddit, Twitter, Quora, Facebook, Threads, besides the UX, onboarding UX, one of the big lessons we need to learn is how to make people stay. What is the proposition, right? What Oleg mentioned about. And I think a lot of that requires a design space of what makes people stay, how do they engage, can you help them find friends, search and discovery, and I think that's one piece which we've started to scratch a little bit on this open algorithm layer, where you go and find out relevant things, because you can sign up to things, but what makes you stay is equally important, so that we do have a chance to compete, give people what they want, make them spend their time effectively, what recommendation systems are powering their feeds, do users have a choice, and I think that's what we're collaborating with Lens a lot on, giving that power back to the users and developers, not trusting any of the people who are running these apps to tell you what you should see. I think that's something which is so messed up right now in Web 2, and we were just talking about the fact that my personal Twitter feed, just the quality of it exponentially decreased in the last 1 month because Twitter decided to change their algorithm. And now I don't feel like going there, but I need an alternative, right? So these alternatives need to kind of start thinking about these dimensions as well. So I think that's kind of the new phase of user engagement, user retention, which will become very important for even all these kind of, if everyone here had the infra to build a social app, let's say you didn't have to worry about scalability, you didn't have to worry about wallet UX, you didn't have to worry about algos, imagine so much innovation would come out of it. And I think that's kind of where we need to work towards.
I'll just add one thing to what you guys said, build for mobile. Don't fucking bother with web, especially on desktop, because that's not where users that would be interested in your product are. They are all on mobile, and it ideally should be native app. I actually observed in Africa, very interesting, I was thinking that mobile web is a way to go. No, they use apps, and that is, kind of unfortunately, because of Apple's and Google's, control over these app stores. But this is the only place where you can build SocialFi right now.
One thing that's a little bit ironic in terms of like the wallet onboarding thing is that there's actually this standard called passkey that is starting to get implemented. And it's basically Microsoft, Google, Apple pushing a standard for managing users and private key for the users. And I think this is a thing we can leverage in the Web3 ecosystem in general to make onboarding basically a passwordless experience for everyone. So I think that's like a nice thing to look at. Another thought on like the decentralization and scalability aspect. I think we need to be careful when we think about these scalability solutions to make sure we can kind of live up to the values that I think Ethereum and Bitcoin has done really well with, like, hey, I need to be able to run a node at home and verify that the things that are happening in the network are actually correct. These scalability solutions can at least run and verify a subset of the network at home, or is it only outsourced to like big stakers that run on like large scale infrastructure? If that's the case, is it really better? Is it really more resilient?
Yeah, I just kind of want to spitball this question because I feel like it would be a missed opportunity if I don't. Nader, you were talking about like immutability and being on chain, and I think Joel, like, you built Ceramic, and that's not blockchain but decentralized network. So maybe from both of you, like, what do you see as the reason for using blockchain or for not using blockchain for social?
Well, I think what Nader said about we don't actually need to solve the double spend problem when it comes to data and social in a lot of cases. I think that's really spot on. Like, we can actually make different trade-offs when it comes to the design of the networks. Like, we don't need to have the same trade-offs as in this case.
I think, like, to kind of continue what he said, also, it's like the issue that he was talking about earlier around like APIs and data availability for, or I would just say open data, and the ability for people to build on top of the network in a siloed infrastructure prevents so much from happening, so much innovation, but also like so many times, this has happened like I think 3 or 4 times where Twitter has like had an API, developers have built on it, created businesses, created companies, and then the next day they wake up and their company is out of business because Twitter's either changed their API, closed their APIs, or raised their prices. And I think like, therefore you're kind of like stifling innovation, you're stifling innovation every time that happens. Absolutely. But imagine if like, only thing Twitter focused on was building out a really good API, and then Twitter, that as we know, it was just one of the clients, and then there were like 20 or 50 or 100 other clients. And every time someone, I don't know, comes out with something better, you kind of just switch to the next one. I think that's a huge thing that you just literally can't do with traditional APIs, because you just don't know what's going to happen. You don't have control. You don't know that the data is going to be there. But with blockchains or blockchain-like, I would say infrastructure like Ceramic and these other solutions, you do know as long as the network is still in existence and operates like it should. I mean, if you look at something like Ethereum, it's been around for a while. Bitcoin's been around for a while. I think Arweave's been around 6 or 7 years now, or something like that. I don't know, maybe less than that. But it's been around long enough for you to kind of have like this confidence that it's going to be there. So I think like just just having the public open data infrastructure that you have full control over is like a huge part of why you would use that type of infrastructure maybe, as opposed to something like AWS, and then someone that owns that API can change it, or maybe you could just go away at some point.
Yeah. Okay, so my last question is about your products. What do you guys see as being like the biggest success of your product thus far that like maybe we can all learn from? Maybe we can go down from you.
Sure, absolutely. So I think at the highest level, we're trying to build a permissionless reputation compute infra, which can apply to a bunch of use cases in crypto. We're already seeing a couple of use cases where there is a need for a reputation score attached to, let's say, a wallet or any object or a community. And social is a great example. You already have social graphs. Based on social graphs, you could create recommendations, people you should follow, content you should see, who is a civil actor, who's not. And I think that's where we can really take away all the burden from a developer or an ecosystem. Think about the data pipeline as well as the compute. And we're using something inspired by PageRank. It's a P2P graph algorithm which was used for Google, early days of Google search, and it's called Eigentrust. So our bread and butter is to make sure that Eigentrust as a compute system can A, exist in a decentralized fashion, and B, solve a variety of reputation compute for you, different use cases. So that's kind of the starting point. Another interesting use case that we're seeing is an on-chain reputation for any community, whether it's a DAO or it's, let's say, decentralized app store. If it's 320,000 users are voting on Sweat Economy, you should also bake in the reputation of those people, so that it's not just highest coin owner gets more weightage, which is what we've seen, most coins, most votes. And how do you build for such a system is what we're solving.
I think that one of the biggest paradigm shifts in terms of like thinking about this space is in like the traditional social, you would build the app and the infrastructure, but I think in Web3, it's more about building a very, very polished, high quality developer platform. After working at AWS for a little over 3 years, like I was really focused 100% on what is known as like serverless infrastructure. So we would build authentication systems, we would build APIs, we would build like serverless functions, and all of these pieces, these building blocks would enable developers to build applications. And we didn't really care what they were building or how they were building them, but if the primitives were good enough, they would be able to actually be successful. And I think in Web3, you can just build out a really high quality developer platform and allow developers to build out the experiences and experiment. And you don't have to kind of bet all of your like money on this one app becoming successful, because you now have hundreds of apps, and you only need one killer app for your protocol to be successful. So that's kind of what we focused on in Lens, is really building out high quality APIs, SDKs, really high quality developer tooling, and continuing to improve that and make the infrastructure as fast, as cheap as possible, and as easily accessible as possible. So that's kind of our continued focus.
Yeah, for Lit, we started off thinking a lot about privacy. So how do people have private data in the open web, and really being able to create a way for people to set different access controls. And then after that, we thought a lot about actually abstracting away signing. So a lot of what Nader was talking about around wallet UX, for a lot of people, they don't need to know how to create a wallet, how to manage all their passphrases. And so with what we call a programmable key pair, we think a lot about how do people abstract signing, either using OAuth to sign in with Google and then own an underlying Web3 wallet, but abstracting all of that signing away so that people can kind of just log on to a Web3 account and be able to utilize it without needing to know and needing to store all their keys. So for us, like thinking a lot about Web3 user experience and being able to allow devs to build in very seamless experiences using Lit's platform.
So we don't actually build any like social products ourselves, but one thing, and then really what we're building is like a general data platform that could be used for social. one thing that I liked that happened, I think one of the things was actually announced today, but so Gitcoin has been building their passport on Ceramic for a while, and I think I heard about this yesterday that Orbis actually launched together with Gitcoin a forum for Shelling Point that actually leverages the Gitcoin passport as a way to like see who can post in the forum. And I think that type of composability is really what we were aiming for when we created the Ceramic network. So it's really cool to see that kind of coming to life.
Yeah, we're pretty proud of Shelling Point. You guys should check it out. There's also an event during EthCC that you can go to about public goods.
Our product is quite simple. We turn your movement into currency, but because it's such an appealing product, we ended up being a very social system. So our token, because of the proposition, is the 9th widest held already. And there are a couple of things that I absolutely love about Web3 is we went live, or we launched 10 months ago. And because of lawyers and some other issues, we didn't go live in the US. And you know what? Our community absolutely slaughtered us, well, I would say me, for it. And we basically grew balls and found lawyers and found a way, and we're going to be going live in the US in September this year. The thing that I think we talked quite a lot about is decentralization, infrastructure, etc. But this is all stuff from businesses. But if you actually engage from the other side and you start thinking, what does SocialFi mean? And if you think Facebook is not about social. Facebook is about just sucking time out of you and pulling you into a screen. What we need to build is something that actually makes you an activist, make you engaged. And that's what I absolutely love about Web3, because our community forced us to go into the US, even though this is probably the scariest thing that you can be doing right now. But you know what? If your users or the people that you're building for are demanding something, you got to find a way to do it. And I think this is the future of Web3, of building with users as opposed to for users with focus groups. Let's do a bit of real research, cause dev, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's actually real time building for these people.
Luki, how are we on time? Do we have time for questions or?
3 more minutes.
Okay, 3 minutes for if you guys, anybody has any questions, or if you work for PancakeSwap and want to defend yourself, like, feel free.
Yeah, talk to me.
Should we give them a
Hi everyone, thanks for your talk. So obviously social is extremely mobile, and one of the most successful social media platforms is Instagram, who started exclusively mobile, and they only had the web app like almost like 5 or 6 years later. Web3 is a much faster pace and environment, and basically I think like everything changes every 3 to 6 months. It's very hard for developers to build on native and keep up with all the changes. And I'm from Wallachnek, and we just had the massive upgrade, and some people were happy, some people were frustrated, but it's a very fast-paced environment, and web apps are the fastest way possible. How can we reduce the cost as a community so that the mobile development is faster? What tools and infrastructure is missing there?
I've focused on mobile for about, I don't know, 5 years. I used to teach React Native training at like companies like Amazon, and basically all of the focus was exactly that, taking the native iOS and native engineers and building cross-platform applications. At the time, it was React Native, and I still think it's React Native. Blue Sky is built on React Native. Orb is actually built on Flutter. I would just say all of these these cross-platform frameworks are actually perfect for social because you don't need crazy animations, you don't need crazy rendering. It's basically just fetching data and rendering it. So I think, like, in my opinion, like making a trade-off and saying, okay, we want to focus on supporting this developer platform because this is going to be the fastest and easiest way for developers to build. Sure, 20% of developers are going to want to build in this other way, and they're going to have to figure it out, and it's going to be harder for them. But if we can like really make it simple, and I think you're kind of seeing the web moving that way with React, where like everyone's building React hooks and React SDKs, and they're not building for Flutter. I'm sorry, they're not building for Vue. They're not building for Angular as much these days. They're just like focused on React because they realize like they can capture 80% of the developer audience that way. That's the way I would kind of go, and I think I'm building a couple of mobile apps actually right now, and I'm using React Native. Been a big fan of React Native. Expo is making React Native development easier. I think that we're seeing still a lot of really high quality apps coming out there, and I would kind of focus on that in my opinion.
Totally agree with Nader. We have 140 people. We are React Native all the way, and it's been working extremely well. But there is another thing that I would say. I think that as technologies are making things easier, and you can, for example, release instead of every 2 weeks, you can release in real time with React Native. You can do a code push. It's working. The other thing is to basically being an activist, because we here, Web3, we gotta have a voice, and what you're seeing already is Apple is getting pushed and is seriously considering multiple app stores, right? So we also need to be thinking, how can we influence these behemoths that need to change their behavior, where they choke a lot of innovation and they are not allowing certain things, especially in crypto, Web3, anything blockchain is a massive issue, and that is the reason why a lot of people are not developing for mobile. But if we want to get next billion people, technology is one, but another thing is just, let's continue pushing these guys to change their behavior.
Thank you so much. We're actually short on time, so you have all the panels and information. Their names are on the monitor. So make sure that you DM them or pin them in the Telegram chat.